A house built in 1920 stayed cooler than a modern luxury home in Arizona, without a single air conditioner. Think about that for a second. We have smart thermostats, triple-pane windows, spray foam insulation, and billion-dollar HVAC systems. And yet, on a 95-degree afternoon, people in century-old homes were sitting comfortably by an open window, while families in brand-new construction were cranking the AC down to 68 just to survive. That's not a coincidence. That's not luck. That is engineering. Quiet, ancient, almost completely forgotten engineering. And once you understand how it worked, you're going to look at your own home very differently. Let's start with the problem nobody talks about. Modern homes are heat traps. Walk into a new-build suburban house on a summer day with the AC off, and within 2 hours it becomes an oven. The temperature climbs fast, it stays high, and nothing short of mechanical cooling brings it back down. Homeowners just accept this. They assume it's normal. But it isn't. Here's why it happens. First, drywall. The walls in most homes built after the 1970s are finished with gypsum drywall. It's cheap, fast to install, and it became the default almost overnight. But drywall has virtually no thermal mass. It doesn't absorb heat. It doesn't regulate temperature. Heat passes through it, bounces around inside the wall cavity, and radiates back into your living space. Your walls are essentially decorative. They're not doing any temperature work at all. Second, modern insulation. Now insulation sounds like it should keep you cool, right? And it does, but only in one direction. Fiberglass bats and spray foam are excellent at slowing heat transfer. The problem is, once heat gets into the wall cavity, from sunlight on the exterior, from radiant heat off a dark roof, that insulation traps it inside. It turns your wall into a slow-release heat reservoir. The temperature inside builds all day, and even after the sun goes down, that stored heat keeps bleeding into your home well into the night. Third, glass exposure. Modern home design loves glass, floor-to-ceiling windows, open-plan great rooms with south-facing walls made almost entirely of window. It looks stunning in a magazine. In real life, it turns your living room into a greenhouse. Single and double-pane glass admits solar radiation freely. The heat comes in, gets absorbed by your floors and furniture, and then can't escape. Architects call this the greenhouse effect. Your home is literally doing what a greenhouse does, on purpose or not. And fourth, HVAC dependency. Somewhere along the way, we stopped designing homes to manage temperature passively and started designing them around the assumption that mechanical cooling would handle everything. The architecture stopped doing the work. The machine was supposed to do it instead, and that decision has cost homeowners and the planet enormously. Now here's where it gets interesting. Old homes didn't have air conditioning, so they had to solve the heat problem a different way. And they did, using 4 core principles that modern construction has almost entirely abandoned. Number 1, airflow. Old homes were designed to breathe. Operable windows on multiple sides of the house weren't an afterthought. They were the system. Builders understood prevailing wind directions and oriented houses to catch them. Hallways ran straight through the house to create corridors of moving air. Transoms, those small windows above interior doors, let air circulate between rooms even when doors were closed. And sleeping porches, common until the mid-20th century, let families escape the heat entirely on hot nights. Moving air carries heat away from your skin through convective cooling. Even air that's 85 degrees feels tolerable when it's moving. Still air at 78 degrees feels unbearable. Airflow wasn't a comfort feature in old homes. It was the primary cooling technology. Number 2, thermal mass. Old homes used heavy materials, plaster walls, brick, stone, thick timber floors. These materials have high thermal mass, meaning they absorb large amounts of heat slowly and release it slowly. During the day, they act like a sponge, soaking up heat and preventing the indoor temperature from spiking. At night, when the outdoor temperature drops, windows open and the cool night air draws that stored heat back out. By morning, the mass is recharged and ready to absorb again. This is a daily thermal cycle. It's completely passive. It costs nothing to run, and it kept homes remarkably stable in temperature, sometimes 15 to 20 degrees cooler than the outdoor peak. Number 3. Shading. Old homes had deep covered porches, wide roof overhangs, and mature trees planted deliberately on the south and west sides. These weren't decorative choices. They were calculated. A properly placed shade tree can block 70 to 90% of direct solar gain on a west-facing wall in the afternoon, the hottest sun of the day. Wide overhangs were engineered to block high summer sun while letting in lower winter sun. The porch kept direct sunlight off the wall behind it entirely. Sun that never hits the wall never becomes heat inside the house. Shading was the first line of defense, and it was free. Number 4. Ceiling height. Old homes had tall ceilings, often 10, 12, sometimes 14 feet. Hot air rises. In a tall room, the hot air accumulates far above head level, while the cooler, denser air stays down where people actually live. High ceilings created a built-in buffer zone. Combine that with a ceiling fan or a clear-story window near the top of the wall to vent that hot air out, and you have a functioning convection system inside a single room. Modern homes with 8-foot ceilings collapse that buffer entirely. The hot air has nowhere to go except into your face. None of this was accidental. Civilizations around the world solved this problem independently thousands of years ago. The Romans built homes around central courtyards called atriums. The open sky above the courtyard created a column of rising warm air, drawing cooler air in from lower openings and shading the surrounding rooms from direct sun. It was elegant, effective, and self-regulating. In the Middle East, Persian architects developed the wind catcher, a tower that rose above the roofline, caught prevailing winds at height, and funneled them down into the interior of the building. Some designs drew air across underground water channels first, cooling and humidifying it before it entered the living space. These structures were still in use and still functional centuries later. Mediterranean architecture, think whitewashed walls in Greece, thick stone in southern Spain, used a combination of high thermal mass, small windows on the sun-facing side, and narrow streets that kept buildings in each other's shadow. Whole villages were engineered as cooling systems, and in the American Southwest, adobe homes used sun-dried clay bricks with extraordinary thermal mass. The walls were sometimes 2 feet thick. Interior temperatures stayed stable through desert summers that routinely exceeded 110 degrees. Indigenous builders understood thermodynamics before the word existed. Every culture that lived in a hot climate developed solutions. The knowledge was hard-won, refined over generations, and deeply practical. Then we threw most of it away. So why did we stop? Several reasons, and they all came together at roughly the same time. After World War II, America needed to build housing fast. Millions of returning soldiers, the baby boom, suburban expansion. Demand was enormous. Speed and cost won. Heavy masonry construction gave way to light wood framing. Plaster gave way to drywall. Deep overhangs were cut from blueprints because they added material cost. Ceiling heights dropped because lower ceilings meant less cubic footage to heat and cool. Developers were building hundreds of identical homes on tight margins. Every dollar saved in construction was a dollar of profit. The problem is that cheap construction shifts the cost to the owner permanently. You build a thermally poor house once and sell it. The buyer pays to keep it livable for decades. Then air conditioning arrived at scale. By the late 1950s and into the 1960s, mechanical cooling became affordable for middle-class homeowners. And suddenly, builders had an excuse. Why design for passive cooling when the homeowner would just install a window unit? Why bother with overhangs and orientation and ceiling height? The machine would fix it. The HVAC industry had every incentive to encourage this thinking. A home that needs mechanical cooling to be livable is a captive customer, and developers had every incentive to build faster, cheaper, and smaller. Passive design requires thought, site orientation, local climate data, material selection. That takes time and expertise. Time costs money. The result is the American suburb, street after street of thermally incompetent homes, completely dependent on electricity to be habitable, designed with no relationship to the sun, the wind, or the land they sit on. Now, what can you actually do about it? You probably can't rebuild your house, but you can make meaningful changes without a major renovation. Window films. Professionally applied solar control film can reject 40 to 70% of solar heat gain through existing glass. It's one of the highest return investments you can make in an existing home. Focus on south and west-facing windows first. Attic ventilation. Your attic absorbs enormous amounts of heat through the roof and radiates it down into your living space. A properly ventilated attic, ridge vents, soffit vents, or a powered attic fan can drop attic temperatures by 30 to 50 degrees. That heat never reaches your ceiling. Strategic shade. Plant fast-growing deciduous trees on your west and southwest exposures. Deciduous trees lose their leaves in winter, letting sun in when you want it. In summer, they block the afternoon sun that does the most damage. Exterior shade structures, pergolas, awnings, extended overhangs, work immediately and require no growing time. Airflow management. Learn which windows to open and when. In most climates, the outdoor air is cooler than the indoor air in the early morning and after sunset. Open low windows on the windward side and high windows on the leeward side. You create a pressure differential that pulls air through the house. Close everything up before the outdoor temperature passes your indoor temperature and you're trapping cool air in. Thermal curtains. Heavy lined curtains on south and west windows kept closed during peak sun hours can make a measurable difference. They're not glamorous, they work. None of these require a contractor. Most of them cost a few $100s, and together they start returning your home to what it used to be, a building that participates in managing its own climate, rather than surrendering that job entirely to a machine. Here's the bigger picture. We didn't lose passive cooling because it stopped working. We lost it because it was inconvenient for the people building and selling homes. The knowledge didn't disappear. It just stopped being applied. And now we pay for that choice every month on our utility bills and every year as energy costs climb. The good news is the knowledge is still there. It's in old buildings, in history books, in the work of architects who never forgot. And increasingly, it's coming back because people are realizing that depending entirely on a machine to make your home livable is a vulnerability, not a solution. And speaking of finding smarter, cheaper alternatives to expensive energy systems, if this video got you thinking, you'll want to see what we cover next. A single, affordable device that's quietly making one of the most expensive home energy investments look completely unnecessary.